Thank you. Not just the questions that you asked today, but for anytime you have a question in the future, they're all public resources, so they're available, the information's available. Just a little bit about me, Angie Wiese. I've been with the city 18 years and started with the fire department. And when DSI was created in 2007, inspections, which is the job I performed in the fire department, was merged with all the other things that you know of at DSI today, which is on your sheet there. And was fire protection engineer, also fire safety manager, so in charge of all of fire safety and inspections. And about 2 years ago became director of safety and inspections. I always told people I didn't want to be director, but nobody twisted my arm to be here. I really love what DSI does. I love the work that we do. I know that it protects people, and that's what keeps me coming to work every day. We're not always people's favorite. But that doesn't stop our folks. They know that what they do is important, and we'll get into some of that with the questions that you guys had asked. I put the functional org chart on the tables, and I was told there'd be 20 people, and so I clearly didn't bring enough copies, but I think that it's important is you get to see what the activities actually are instead of just the names of the different divisions. And even though there's like these hard blue lines in between all of those functions, there's a ton of crossover. We have, really everything is a multidiscipline issue. So we expect each other to work with each other on different issues when they come our way. So we're kind of split into two different halves. I call them the sides of the house. So we have our housing and construction services on one side, and then we have our business licensing and customer service on the other side. Dan Nijellik and David Hoban are our two deputy directors. And then really kind of our only, I'll say program that's not under one of the two deputy directors is rent stabilization, and that's under me directly. Really only because the span of control of our two deputies is pretty solid right now to add another activity, but also when rent stabilization was May 1st, 2022, we didn't have any staff. Staff started in June. So for a whole month, I did rent stabilization. So it's really under me, really only because I was the one who started with it, and I continue to meet with them weekly on any sort of issues because it is still a very, very new program. I could go through each of those things. I think what really surprises people the most is how much is actually under that umbrella. There's a lot in there. There's quite a few activities that we perform, and we have great folks that do it. So we have about 160 employees. I would say at least about 2/3 of them are field. So they come in the morning and do some paperwork, connect with their colleagues, do some things in the office, but then they're in the field performing inspections the rest of the day. That means that it could be a little bit hard to get a hold of them too, because they're out on inspections and that's their primary job. I put in the memo, because there's a question about metrics, some of our stats. And as you can imagine, we do a fair amount of work. So just in round numbers, I didn't pull what 2023 was, which would be our last full year of data, but about 40,000 construction permits. That's a lot of activity. That equates to about $800 million of investment in the city, which is awesome when you aggregate it like that. About 61,000 construction inspections. We issue about 3,000 business licenses annually. Respond to about 3,300 animal-related complaints. We conduct about 12,400 fire certificate of occupancy inspections, about 33,000 code enforcement inspections, about 12,000 vacant building inspections, processed about 1,100 rent stabilization requests for increase in rent, along with 300 inquiries and 18 complaints. and about 61,000 calls and emails to our call center for information and complaint. And I'm proud to say we've housed dozens of unsheltered residents, even though that's not in the scope of their responsibilities. I can also share with you some metrics later, but all that to say is we do a ton of work. And you can imagine with that volume, I'm not surprised when something falls through the cracks. And I'm not big on admonishing people because I assume good intent. And I know how much our folks care about the work that they do. So when I find that something fell off the rails, I just say, hey, found this, looks like it got dropped. Can you get it back going? And then we move on, because our whole goal is to have compliance, and that doesn't happen if we're not present. So should I get into the questions that were asked?
Sure.
We're gonna pass it off to Cole Hansen here. Sounds like it's easier. Yeah, okay, perfect. All right, great.
You can flip through the slides.
Oh, we have slides too?
Yeah, girl.
Fantastic. Well, here to make it easier for everybody, can you hear me in the back? Perfect. Then you can keep your microphone. Excellent. So very quickly, I'll introduce myself. Hello, my name is Cole Hansen, he, him, and I'm the current board president for the Hamline Midway Coalition. Welcome to all of our neighbors for coming. I'm super excited you're here. I'm really excited you're here because the CVS is my biggest neighbor. So I also want to compliment DSI for your work with the permits and specifically building inspections as a homeowner. Do a lot of DIY stuff, and the electricians and the plumbing and the building trades folks are incredibly friendly and helpful. Like, they've kept my family safe when I've been working on stuff on my own. So cheers to that team. One of the reasons, though, we wanted to talk tonight is the ongoing neighborhood concerns regarding the corner of Snelling University, particularly the vacant CVS building. So I mentioned I'm a neighbor. I live directly across the street from the CVS. I shouldn't say that. I live across the street from the turf, but they are right next to each other in the whole line. I've lived in the neighborhood on and off since 2009. We bought that house in 2022. And since then, CVS has been my worst neighbor, and that is including everyone who litters on the green line. Every day, I take my daughter from our front door to Fry and Sherburne for the school bus. And every day, her and I, with our trash claw grabbers, pick up a Target bag's worth of trash between Sherburne and Fry. And most of that is coming right from the CVS lot. A lot of it gets littered, thrown around. There's folks there all day long. It's a really tough place to be. The parking lot feels like a go anywhere, do whatever you want sort of zone. They've done some work to put some chain link fence up in the places that were obviously pretty attractive to certain activities. But at the end of the day, the CVS flights like a block around it in every direction. It's a tough neighbor. So with that, how does the city communicate with the property owner, SCP-2005C21045 LLC? It's a weird way to spell CVS. Regarding the condition of the property and notices about abatement orders.
Thank you. And yes, when I first saw this and looked up the CVS and looked up the ownership, and this is what's listed. And because my first question was, does CVS still own it? Because Target or Kmart no longer owns the Kmart on the east side. So I thought, well, do they still own it? And then I got this, and I was like, well, that's not very helpful. But that does look very corporate ownership type. So I went onto CVS's website, and I looked at their surplus property. By the way, before this, I knew they owned it, but this property is listed as surplus and available for lease. So if you know anybody who's looking for space, it is available for lease. But it's also one of 322 other properties available for CVS for lease, sublease, or sale. So you can imagine how much they're interested in moving that property along. That's one of the issues that we have with that, because they aren't motivated to move it along. And with the development happening in the area, what they're really motivated to do, this is just theories by Angie, Wiese, this is not anything that I have gotten or told, is wait for the property value to increase enough to make it worth selling. In the meantime, that makes things really hard for the neighborhood. I will say they have assigned an actual property manager at our request. And yes, there are still issues, but we've had far fewer abatements. And abatements is it's a terrible word, actually. I was going to call it a fun word. It's not. It's a terrible word, but I reference it like a ton of times in here because it's the term that we use in the ordinances. Abatement just means that we have the authority to take care of something and then charge the property owner for it. And we can take care of nuisance activities, and we have to, the state law requires us to do that on the least cost basis in order to remedy the nuisance. So we have to give people time to comply. We can only charge them for doing the work once they prove that they have not complied, which, back to your issue, means that litter stays for far longer and in the meantime blows all around, longer than anyone would like. Graffiti stays on longer than anyone would like, and the list goes on and on. Like I said, they've been much more responsive, which means that when we hear of something, we notify them and they take care of it. So the number of issues, I would say, hasn't necessarily decreased, but the number of unresponded issues from CVS has decreased. We've had to charge them less since they've had a property manager dedicated to the site. There was some question, I think it's in here, about how are we notified? So any official orders have to go by writing. So every time that we are notified that there's something at the property, we do an inspection, verify it, they get a written letter. Anything official has to happen in writing. Because we know that there's a property manager here, we follow that up with a phone call. You'll get this in writing, but let you know we need this taken care of. So anything official has to happen in writing. That's because if we have to go to abatement, we have to have had officially notified them, and then we can take care of the issue. So all official orders happen in writing.
Very quickly, if you want to make more orders, submit it in writing. HamlinMidway.org/report takes you very quickly to the DSI website. Submit those complaints.
There's a link to our web form right in here. Also, if the web is not your thing, 266-8989. It's on your pen. It's on your magnet. Even though the phone line is only staffed until 4:30, our call center team checks the voicemail every morning, and we'll get those complaints entered. And yes, it's a complaint-based system. So even though there is a vacant building monitoring program, they're not hitting every vacant building every day. So we do inspect them on complaint as well. You asked about escalating penalties. Yes. Fun fact, we're not allowed to. That requires a charter change, which we went in front of council yesterday at the council organizational meeting and opened the door back up for us to talk about administrative citations, which is what a fine or penalty fee is. It does require a charter change, and that means it has to go to the charter commission. If the charter commission agrees that we should have the ability to have fines, then it goes back to council, and it has to have a 7-0 vote in order to change the charter. And really just to open the door to be able to have a tool of fines. Anything where we would apply fines to a situation would still have to go back to council through ordinance, have a public hearing. But this allowed, a charter change is the first step. So right now we're focused on the charter change, It has gone before the Charter Commission 2 other times and failed. So if you are interested in this, I encourage you to notify your council member and possibly the Charter Commission.
Thank you. So on the vacancy and fees, so how are the vacancy categories, including the designation of the property at 499 Snelling as a category 2 vacant building, defined and enforced?
So I do, because I know that you all love reading St. Paul Legislative Code. I did put a link in here to the appropriate chapter. DSI covers 170 chapters of the St. Paul Legislative Code. So we don't expect anybody to know all of the chapters or all of the requirements. So I did put the link in, but I also put the language in here. The exact definitions are in the code, but I explain it like this. Vacant building category 1 is like I shut off the lights, shut the door and walked away. So maybe it's for sale, maybe I'm in between tenants. And it might not even be on our radar if it's that quick of a turn. Category 2 is more than one violation and it's vacant. And that is the vast majority of our vacant building stock. And then category 3 is in the worst shape. Usually needs, I would call it insurmountable amount of work, or the scales have tipped on whether or not the investment is worth keeping the building type of thing. They're really bad shape. That's a vacant building category 3. So you can see the range between that the 2 covers, and it covers a lot of ground. So most of our buildings that are in the vacant building program are in category 2. All of the buildings are visited monthly by DSI, vacant building inspectors, and they are looking for really any sign, any violation, because then they'll order it abated. But they're also making sure that they're not being broken into, because that can cause other issues. So predominantly what we're worried about are fires. And but there could be other issues that we're concerned about. So if there is any visible sign of forced entry, then they'll increase the amount of times they're going. So maybe weekly, bi-weekly, and in some cases night inspections if there's evidence that people are entering at night. Obviously we exercise that with caution. It's not terribly safe to go at night. We go at pairs. So we use that tool sparingly, but we utilize it if we think it's warranted. There's something about the fee in here as well.
Yeah, does the yearly vacant building fee of $4,918 vary by category, and how does this fee contribute to addressing the issues of vacant properties in our neighborhood? Is it meant to be a deterrent, or what is the vacancy fee used for?
So the $4,918 is actually after you've been a vacant building for 1 year. So the fee for year 1 is half of that, and we actually just increased this in 2023. So it's $2,459 for the first year, and after the first year that's on the vacant building list, it goes up to the higher dollar value. And as I mentioned, we don't have penalty fees, so we can only be cost recovery. We are not allowed to charge more than what it costs us to administer our services. And that's what the fee cover is. Not meant to be a deterrent. The increase in fee, though it also doubles as a deterrent, languishing on the vacant building list is really because the longer something sits vacant, the more issues it tends to have. So the more services it needs from our staff. And in your CVS case, I don't know what dollar value would be a deterrent in this case. I mean, it could be $100,000. I don't know that it would be a deterrent. So it's not a penalty fee. It's strictly to do cost recovery on administering the vacant building program.
Okay. On the complaints, cleanups, and costs, we requested a comprehensive list detailing the number of complaints received, the city's response to these complaints, and the costs incurred by the property owner for cleanups and abatements over the last 2 years. Is that something we can get?
Absolutely. So I printed this, but sent an electronic copy to Justin and Jenny. This is from 2020 to current. Almost everything DSI does is public. So thou ask, we shall produce. The only thing that is private is complainant information. So we can't release any complainant information or anything identifying a complainant. So what unit they came from, what street they were on, nothing. So that has all of the complaints that we have on CVS since 2022, and you will see that the complaints increased when it went vacant for sure. As for the assessments, I put, so all assessments, actually you can look up on Ramsey County's website, all their tax information. And so I did put a little snip of their screen grab of their tax information on here. But also the city has a website where you can put in the address or the property identification number and find the assessments at the property, at any property, your own property. You can pay them there too. I'm sure my director of finance would love that. A little plug in there for paying your assessments. So one thing to note on what is showing up online is that assessments are processed quarterly. So every time we do an assessment, we have to notice the person who's being assessed. They get a letter. If they want to contest their assessment, there's a hearing that they're able to contest it. And after that, then it goes to council to ratify. So it's a very long process, which just means that it shows up on the county site much later than when we actually process the assessment. So what you can look up is what has gone through that whole process, and really it's not an assessment until it goes through that whole process. But I have links in here to both the county site and the city site. But it appears right now that CVS has around $5,600 in special assessments payable in 2024, and payable in 2023 was $779. Payable in 2022 was about $1,100, and payable in 2021 was about $1,300.
So I think this kind of answers the next two questions of how can we easily obtain this information? Frequency of cleanups and charges against property owners going forward. I assume that's in the notes.
Yes, so the assessment information that I just told you about, but also DSI has a we call it the portal. It's not a very good word, but a place where you can look up any address and you can see the activity there. You can see what building permits were pulled. You can see what the complaints are. You can see when the fire certificate of occupancy was last performed. So that link is on here as well. If there is missing information on there, it's not that we're trying to hide anything. It's just our lack of really good technology. So like I said, almost everything that we do is public. So if you're seeing some breadcrumbs in there, but you want more information, just ask and we will get it to you.
I think that covers it. Yeah, so great. So thank you very much, Director Wiese. And I'm going to pass it back to our Director of Organizing, Justin Lewandowski.
Cool dancing, everybody!
Yay!
I'm actually going to borrow that because I don't want to yell. Thank you, Cole, for leading that section, and thank you to Director Wiese for answering those. I heard a lot of different things there. Opportunities for us as neighbors to get on the Charter Commission, to work with DSI, to talk with our city council members about the importance of holding our neighbors like CVS accountable. A lot of different ways that we can work together here in our district councils, like on July 13th, Union Park and Hamline, Midway, picking up trash together as we continue to think of long-term solutions. There's short-term actions we can take, and there's long-term solutions that we're really excited to work with DSI around, and specifically around that CVS. So thank you for answering those specifically. Now we're going to get into some real juicy ones here, folks. I'm also just really excited about the idea to the website, the city's website is kind of hard to navigate. And so I really appreciate this resource guides that you gave all of us. For those at home, streaming as well, we will make sure to send this out digitally. We'll also put it on the Hamline Midway Coalition's Development Committee public folder. If you go in there, you can make sure that you can access that if you lose it in the future as well. So now I'm really excited to bring up my good friend Lisa Nelson from Union Park, everybody. Put your hands together for Lisa Nelson. Come over here. I'm just gonna like Mr. Rogers this, I feel like, maybe lean one of these. To get started, we talked a lot about specifically the DSI processes around CDS. And I think some of these might be repeated, so I'm gonna try to cut through some of those. But can the city force building owners to sell if they keep a property vacant for a really long time? And second question, if passed at the state level, would you support a land value tax for vacant property?
Thank you. So
That might just be.
I know, I feel like it's where I'm standing in relation to the speakers. They look like they're looking at me. One thing that was more of a general question, but tied into the CVS, or could have been, is that top one there. Actually, it's on mine, but not on yours. Oh, clean up trash. It is on yours. So one of the things that happens, or what we find happens, is that sometimes we don't have the authority to do something, but we have relationships with a lot of building owners and business owners because we inspect them routinely for either business licensing or their fire certificate of occupancy. So sometimes we can call an owner up and say, hey, we're hearing a lot of this. We're hearing a lot of that. You could save yourself a lot of trouble by doing X, Y, and Z. Or is there a city resource we can connect you to? Is there something going on that we could help you with? Are you struggling with something? And just have a conversation with them. We can do it. Encourage you all to do it. If nothing else, it shows them that you're paying attention, and you are paying attention. So we do it in a way that's trying to offer help and services because we don't want to penalize them. We don't want to send them nasty grams. We want them to comply, and we want them to be good. Can we force someone to sell their property? No. But like I said, we can have conversations. We can figure out why they're holding on to something. Like, can we connect you with some people? Can I connect you with some economic development opportunities? So we can have conversations. We cannot force people to sell their property. I'm not sure who put the question in, but I would need to know more about the land value tax before answering that. And there's like a whole host of other people that we'd have to have weigh in on that question. But we do advocate for things at the legislature. If you heard about the copper wire theft legislation, that was myself and Director Kershaw and Commander Hallstrom who worked on that legislation and testified at the Capitol to get it passed, and it did. So, we can make things happen. It's not always easy. It's often frustrating, but we're committed to doing it.
Thank you. The next question I have is around which codes you decided to enforce. What processes does DSI use to decide which zoning codes to enforce? And I think that this question was brought up quite a bit because it seems like there is a level of difference between what's enforced for a business and like what's enforced for homeowners and renters in the neighborhood. So how is Allianz and CVS being held accountable to the same standards as somebody who lives on Sherburne who's got a couple of rocks in the boulevard or a trash bin in their garage?
Yeah. Couple of rocks.
Trash bin.
So I need a little more context, which you provided. Thank you. Zoning applies everywhere in the city. Zoning is not a look back code, so it only moves forward. And so there we have a lot of what's called legally non-conforming uses around the city. Another legal term that only people at DSI know. But we're mostly complaint-based. So if we receive a complaint, we inspect. Yes, we have a lot of folks who perform inspections, but not nearly enough folks to drive every street and look for things to write up. So for the most part, what we're writing up are things that people call us about. There's a question later here about accountability, and so I'll get a little bit more into that then. But zoning on its fundamentals is just how you're allowed to use the land. We don't want, you know, the metropolitan waste facility, the poop plant, to be next to a school. That's zoning, that's land use. But land use also has other things like regulations for signs and setbacks and design standards and the heights of buildings. It's actually thicker than the building code, if you can believe that. So, you know, there's a lot in there. And, but it is complaint-based. So a lot of what zoning is on development. When it starts, zoning code is applied, and they're doing things like site plan review, reviewing the plans, making sure that it can both be cited there and that all of the that their proposed site plan meets all of the requirements of the zoning code. I think this, you know, based on the context you got more into like code enforcement, and again, still complaint based, but and as I mentioned earlier, we have to give people time to comply. And so I would say the vast majority of the orders that we write are common, and so they're on kind of an automatic process. The complaint comes in, let's say tall grass and weeds. Some time ago, the council decided that it was taking too long to get tall grass and weed complaints taken care of. So they said, cut the time, don't do an inspection. Send out the letter. The letter should say, if you haven't cut your grass, cut it. If you did cut your grass, you can ignore this letter. And that's essentially what the letter says now. And so that letter gets sent out regardless of the address. Nobody looks to see if it's a commercial property or a residential property, it just goes out. But on the backside, we do an inspection. And if the grass is mowed, we close the inspection. If it's not mowed, we send it to abatements. Abatements were formerly done by the Parks Department, and for probably the last 5 years, Parks hasn't had enough people to keep up with the work that we were giving them. So they were doing tall grass and weeds, they were doing snow shoveling, and they were doing rubbish and garbage abatement. And it was taking weeks to get to some of these things. They asked us to find contractors to do it. So last year we issued an RFP for the garbage and rubbish, and that was the first one to go. So that's now, those abatements are done by a contractor. And this year we started with the tall grass and weeds with a contractor. So they just got on board like 2 weeks ago. This was last year, that would have been plenty of time, but we had a really warm spring, so the grass is growing. And if we had any snow, we would have had we did have a abatement contractor for snow and ice for last year as well. So those are now performed by a contractor. We expect because of that, that the turnaround times will be much faster on the actual abatements. Because of the delays, what we're seeing is that it might be 2 weeks before the grass got cut. The grass gets cut, Parks goes out there to mow the lawn, and the grass is cut, so they close it. Well, yeah, it's been like another 2 weeks. So nobody was surprised that they were getting a bunch of these that had already been taken care of. It wasn't efficient, so we changed the process.
Is it then put on their taxes cost?
It most certainly is. It is not cheap. I would suggest that you either hire the neighbor kid for a greatly reduced price than what it costs the city to mow your lawn and put it on your taxes.
Let's see. We have a question. We're gonna try to hold questions to the end, but I didn't say that yet.
But this is exactly the question.
The question is, our neighbor houses get a letter from the city and they give us less than a week to remove our trash can from the boulevard or the rock or cut the grass. Yet we watch CVS and some other buildings in our neighborhood that have a mattress that sits there for a month. That's the question. It seems to be the neighbors in the houses get their hands slapped with a $300 abatement, yet CVS and some of our other neighbors have a mattress for a month. I've watched it, I've videoed it, several of us have. That's the question.
Yep, no, and I thank you for that because our whole goal is compliance. And fortunately, we have found that most people want to do the right thing. So maybe they're new to St. Paul and they didn't know you have to cut your grass and it can't be a foot tall. They get the letter, they want to do the right thing, they mow the lawn. Maybe the lawnmower has been broken and they've been dawdling about getting it fixed and they get it fixed and they get the lawnmower. What happens in a situation that you're describing is we send the letter to CVS, just like we would anyone else. They don't get it any later, it's not delayed, it goes immediately. But that's an abatable offense, if you will. And we didn't have anybody that was able to be on top of it. So the work order likely went to Parks immediately. It didn't get remedied immediately. So the abatement of these, we're hoping to see with the new process that they happen faster. That's our expectation.
When did that new process start? What year?
So the mowing or the tall grass and weeds just started about 2 weeks ago. And the rubbish abatement, I want to say, started in, I'd have to look back, but it was late last year, maybe October.
In terms of like the sending the letter immediately and then.
Oh, no, that happens. But as far as us getting the contractor to do the abatement instead of the Parks Department to do the abatement.
Okay, because I know myself and other neighbors have had situations where complaint has been put into the online system, then called in, then a higher level inspector has been called all the time. Every one of those gets closed as gone on arrival or weeds were cut, and none of that has occurred, right? One of them was an industrial sized oven visible from the street for over a year that took calls, emails, 6 different people talked to get somebody to come out and say, oh yeah, that's here. Right, so I think that's what people are wondering. How is this happening that somebody who lives in the neighborhood is getting a thing, clean this in a week, and other people, right, it seems like you can call a zillion times and nobody's registering that it's there.
And it's primarily businesses or apartment buildings. Yet I personally had an abatement and they came out and they cleaned it during the same time period. Yet I watched the mattress sit for a month. And I called. What the mattress. So it's businesses that seem to be looked the other way.
That shouldn't be happening. If I can get some addresses, I'd be happy to look into them. I'm serious, it shouldn't be happening. The expectation is the same. We do have to give them time to comply. And, we try to be business friendly. So if we talk to them and they say, I have a contractor coming up to pick it up on Thursday, it'll be gone by Thursday. We hope that, even though they were supposed to comply by, let's say, Wednesday, they say, I got somebody coming on Thursday, it'll be gone. We try to work with them on that. We don't want to send it to abatement. Our goal is compliance. If it's going to be gone, that's our goal. But that's not what I'm hearing you say. So I'd like to look into those. Because if there are things that are happening that shouldn't be happening, we'll correct the behavior.
Thank you. And we're going to keep moving on. I appreciate you for those great answers. And one of the things when it comes to like University Avenue as an example, right? It's an area of the city that's got several burned out lots, excessive trash, there's been destruction of trees, other vacant buildings. Do you guys have do you look at I know it's a complaint-based system, but how do you work with the city and other departments around specific geographies that might have multiple different examples of need?
So I have a couple different examples in here, but I mentioned that we try to strike a balance between getting compliance and working with people. And COVID and civil unrest hit university really hard. And our inspectors did over 300 inspections in the few days following civil unrest. Those were some very long days, but also very heartwarming. Just quick side note, out there doing inspections the day after the largest night of civil unrest, and it's about 2 o'clock, and the mayor's office calls and says, "Hey, I got a bunch of volunteers that are ready to do something. Where should we deploy them?" I said, "They're not needed here." I said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Everyone left their house today with a broom and a bucket and a case of water, and it was awesome. Nobody needed to be told that help was needed. Everyone just left their house and helped, and it was amazing." So I'm sure some of those folks were you. I really appreciate it. So boarded up windows. It was really hard to get glass for a really long time. The civil unrest didn't just happen here. It happened all over the country. It happened all over the world. It was really hard to get glass. There were people who were still afraid that their businesses would be damaged when subsequent trials and verdicts came out. And so we worked really closely with businesses. It's really hard to give a business a correction letter when their window was smashed out. Obviously no fault of their own. Those were hard conversations, but also, working with businesses saying your insurance company might actually require you to have this letter. We know that we'll work with you on having it be replaced, but we need to at least notice you that it's required to be fixed, and hopefully that will help you with your insurance. Those are the types of things that happened. I worked with Chad, with the Midway Chamber afterwards as well, just to kind of go through, and we did a walking tour of university to see kind of where things were at. And that day we were doing the walking tour, the furniture barn, was installing their glass that day, which was, it's all windows. So it was really great to see that they were installing their glass. As far as a comprehensive plan on what the plan is for University Avenue, as you mentioned, it's not really a DSI realm, but we work really closely with our partners at Planning and Economic Development. Jimmy Lloyd is the Economic Development Director. And so they have people who, unfortunately, they're also short-staffed, and so they're like whack-a-mole. This person needs help, and then this person needs help. So proactive activities is hard to come by. An example of the whack-a-mole is actually Pascal and University. There's 4 Black-owned businesses right now that are getting pressured to move out, pay up or move out, new ownership in town. And Council President Jalali reached out and said, "Is there anything that DSI can do here?" And there's nothing that I can do from an enforcement lens. It doesn't mean that I'm unwilling to help. So, something smelled a little fishy, did a bunch of investigating, figured out that who used to own it, what the sale was, what price it was for cash, who the new owners are, what their address and phone numbers are, and really trying to connect, all these folks with resources that can hopefully help them and keep their businesses there. So can DSI do anything from an enforcement lens, the big hammer? No, but we know a lot about different properties. We're essentially trained investigators. So give a dog a bone and we'll dig in. And I'm hoping for a good outcome for those business owners.
Thank you very much. And y'all should go support those business owners as well. Maybe go buy some albums. We just learned about this issue the other day, and I want to say on behalf of those Black-owned businesses in the Midway neighborhood, Thanks for showing up to do what you can. Appreciate that. Now I'm gonna pass off the next round of questions to my good friend, Wiese Nelson, everybody. Wiese Nelson.
Didn't talk loud enough. Maybe if I hold completely still, this will work. So I'm Lisa Nelson. I'm a board member at Union Parks. We're crossing University to the south. And so my big thing is not CVS. It's been the vacant lots by Allianz Fields. And kind of along the lines of what other people have said, like these are things that have led us to become people who take pictures of mattresses, people who are out measuring noise on their phones. Like I made a timeline with pictures of trash in the vacant lot, which I emailed to you last fall. Like a lot of us feel like we're really doing a lot to try to say like, hey, we've been making complaints. This is what's happened. We're looking at the data. Like DSI really has provided a lot of the public data about these things. But then we're finding things like, while Union Park has been doing monthly cleanups along University Avenue for the past 3 years, every month picking up trash from the vacant lots by Allianz Fields. Meanwhile, people have been making complaints. Those complaints are being marked as gone on arrival or minor windblown trash. At the same time that people who have like a little pile of brush get an immediate abatement order. So to me, kind of the documentation and reporting in the data, like it doesn't really tell enough of the story when so much is just kind of up to the discretion of the inspectors. And I've spoken to people at DSI who said that it is just up to the discretion of the inspectors. They weren't willing to make comparisons between judgments of different inspectors. They said that they don't always issue abatements and that when they could be.
So what,
Where'd you go? What training is in place to ensure that inspector discretion doesn't lead to different things being done in different places?
I realized that I put in here that our onboarding uses a 3-step model, but I didn't put what the 3 steps are. So I'll have to adjust that. So our onboarding has a 3-step model, which is essentially that first they are shadowing an inspector, a seasoned inspector or supervisor. Second, the person, the newbie, is doing that seasoned inspector's inspections with the seasoned inspector riding along, so they flip places. And then the last is that they perform inspections with a supervisor and have to have a check off before they're able to fly solo in the field. With about 24 inspectors on the property maintenance side, between fire safety inspection, property maintenance, and code enforcement property maintenance. You might imagine there's some variety. There's also, and I know this might come a shock to you, not every one of our inspectors performs 100%. And those are performance issues, and we need to know about them and address them, and we do. Performance management is a real thing, and I'd be lying if I said otherwise, that they're all perfect and they all do something exactly the same way. They don't. We just had a sit down with code enforcement, I say we, but the manager, and said, that he was noticing too much variation in what was being called and wanted to and if there's something like performance management with an individual person, I'm not the kind of person that says we should bring everybody in room and admonish everyone because of one person's actions. That's not my version of management. But if somebody's seeing a host of like a little bit here, there's a little bit funky thing here, there's a little bit thing here. Yes, let's bring everybody together. Let's level set and say, look, it's the Wild West. What happened? Let's all get our poop in a group and figure this out. So that happened actually this week, and it was something that the manager recognized and had a performance discussion with folks. They do receive periodic training, so it's not just the onboarding training. They do receive periodic training both in like technical aspects. What does the code actually say? Sometimes we find this thing that there's the game of telephone happens in code world too. So we had an inspector who thought that, or who kept writing up loose toilets. And we're like, I mean, yes, like the toilet should be attached to the ground. That's normally good practice. But like, how are you checking that the toilet is loose and why? And and so it was one of these like, well, so-and-so did it when I was riding with them, or I heard so-and-so talk about a loose toilet. And so I started checking the toilets. These are the types of things that we address with ongoing training. And so both on the technical aspect and on the customer service aspect and processes. So, you know, what the process is, how much time for compliance, what are our tools that are available to us, how do we document things, those are the process types things. All of our orders are appealable to the city council, and that go through a legislative hearing officer. And we do find a lot of those inconsistencies through that process, because those are staffed by all the supervisors. And so like supervisors don't have to go digging for inconsistencies. They find them, they're readily presented to them, which is not the ideal way to find inconsistencies, but it is one way, and we address them. And if we find that the order is not justified, we say, you know, we don't need to do this order, this appeal, we'll just get rid of the order. Sometimes we find the reverse. Inspector wrote the handrail and the whole stair is falling down. So we find inconsistencies and we address them to the best of our ability.
Are people designated to a certain specific geographic area? Or did you get a different inspector on each side, or you know,
The question was, are inspectors assigned to geographic areas? And the answer is yes, for the majority of our inspectors. So residential inspectors, code enforcement inspectors, vacant building inspectors, construction services inspectors are all by geographical area. They do cover for each other's, particularly if there's like a long-term absence. Or if there's an emergency issue, they'll obviously cover each other's area, but for the most part, they're assigned a geographical area. The exception is with the commercial property, and that is because they are assigned based on they're assigned based on the use. So factories are inspected by one person, schools are inspected by another person, hospitals. So the use is how the commercial inspectors are assigned.
I have just a quick follow-up to that, which is, so when you're talking about training, like, do you have training materials, like PowerPoints of things? Because when I asked about training materials specifically about trash, like, how do you tell people, like, do you have like training on how to say this trash is minor, this trash is worth abating? I was just pointed to the city ordinances, which don't really address what's minor, what's worth getting an abatement order immediately.
So it depends on the division that we're talking about. You're talking about code enforcement, and if there's a PowerPoint, I haven't seen it, but we do, like, we educate people on what we're talking about. The abatable piece goes back to what I said a little while ago, which is that it has to be considered a nuisance. And if it's not considered a nuisance, it can't be abated by state law. And the nuisance is that we have to prove that it is causing some sort of, subsequent issue. So let's say the tall grass and weeds, you might think that doesn't seem like it's a nuisance abatement. That has to do with rodents. And if you had some tall grass and weeds, we'd be having a lot of rodents. Same with the trash, like the overflowing trash cans, nuisance abatement because of, that's actually also rodents. So different things, different nuisance abatement, but there are certainly things that aren't able to hit that threshold. We had a recent conversation in downtown about foggy windows. Anybody go in the Skyway? We can do nuisance abatement for broken windows. We can't do nuisance abatement for foggy windows. It's foggy, it's not in good repair, but it's not something that would be considered a nuisance and therefore not able to be abated. So back to your question, it is a judgment call, and really we're trying to determine in the back of our heads, is this something that would stand up in court? If I ordered this on abatement and it was challenged, would we win in court? That's what they're trying to make a judgment on.
All right, and we're running a little, I didn't hold perfectly still, I'm sorry. So I'm not going to ask all the questions, but I think there are probably answers to more questions in the document. Is it possible to have inspectors take photos when they are called to inspect something and don't find something? Because I know an issue that I've encountered is reports that I've made have been assigned to the wrong location, or maybe the inspector, when they're looking for the pile of trash, happened to go to like the one part of the block where there wasn't trash. And so if it's an issue of like going to the wrong spot, if there's a picture saying, see, no trash, then a person who makes the complaint can follow up and say, oh, actually, that's not what I meant. Sorry, I put the wrong address. Like kind of keep it going rather than having it just kind of disappear.
So the answer to this is it's really hard to take a picture of the absence of something.
Or even just like the location that they went to would be helpful.
So occasionally our inspectors do put in a photo of like, well, here's the lawn when I showed up, let's say. But it's not a requirement for them. Part of that is our technology that we have. We are moving to a new system. There's a question in here about being engaged on, on things like this. And since we're going to be implementing new technology, I put a little plug in here that it sounds like district councils would be interested in being part of our beta testers on the public side of this new technology system. So yes, we'll get you guys engaged in that. So in the future, we hope to have the ability for residents and business owners and visitors to St. Paul to be able to take photos and submit them with their complaint. Right now, it's not a possibility because of cybersecurity issues. Again, we're hoping to address that with our new technology system. And the first order of business is to get everything we currently do into the new system and then to enhance it.
Sorry, I'm going to ask one other question that isn't on my list, which is, DSI used to take complaints via C-Click Fix where you could upload photos, and I was curious why that went away.
C-Click Fix was not reliable on our end, so we abandoned using it. Also, C-Click Fix charges cities to use them, and since it wasn't providing enough value for the city, we abandoned utilizing it.
All right, I think I'm going to hand it over to Justin for a few more questions.
Thank you, Lisa. And anybody else feeling kind of enlightened? I'm just really chewing on the fact that, like, what were some of those numbers that did like 10,000 or 60,000 complaints each year on a complaint-based system? Phone calls alone. I'm also really impressed that you said the word poop twice in tonight's discussion. I believe one of them was about poop management, and that makes me laugh. On a more serious note, though, one of the questions that came in, and like Lisa had mentioned, we're running short on time. The meeting gets done at 8. Again, want to remind folks, this is the beginning of a conversation. We are very excited as Como Park, Union Park, Hamline Midway Coalition to continue to find ways to partner with DSI in the future. And here's Jenny Nelson, our executive director.
I also just want to add that Director Wiese put a lot of time into putting a lot of information, as she mentioned, in the document. So the questions that were submitted ahead of the meeting, she answered all of them, and that will be sent out. Make sure we get your email address if you didn't register ahead of time. Make sure that you check in with Jason before you leave and put your email address so that we can get that information out to you. So even if you don't see your question appear today because we run short of time, we will be sending out that information as a follow-up.
And we will have tonight's recorded meeting publicly available in our development committee folder and on YouTube. To go back to that question, I am speaking now as Justin, the neighbor And I got a couple of folks in here who do the Sunday cleanups on the Snelling Avenue station. And we've all done, a lot of folks in the room have done cleanups at the CVS site. And I think this is more of a how can we partner in the future. But the opioid crisis is very visible in our communities, particularly at the CVS station. And what strategies are in place to manage issues like sharps on properties, which can lead to broader public health risks in parks and transit areas. We've seen that it's not a safe use site, but it has been an active use site. And we find sharps in our parks, and we find tinfoils on our public transit sites. And I'm wondering how in the world can we work together to make sure that we can abate that as quickly as possible. You know, I'm glad that we have neighbors willing to do that volunteer work, but it's biohazardous waste. And we need to figure out systems that get that kind of material up quicker. And so how can we work together to make sure that things like sharps and other paraphernalia are taken care of more quickly?
Thank you. And I talked to Jenny the other day, and it sounds like you had Met Transit here, which would, you know, hopefully they address some of that. We partner a lot with Streetworks, and Streetworks has a good relationship or partnership with South Metro Harm Reduction and Clinic 555, who will both supply safe use materials, do things like HIV testing, wound care, but they'll also pick up sharps. And kind of like we have a complaint-based system, they actually want your phone calls because those are folks that they want to connect with, and they want to talk to them about safe use and safe disposal. And that's who we connect with when we need things like that, because it doesn't just come up with a cleanup, it comes with a person who cares about people who are struggling with addiction.
Thank you. And I just want to, on that note, say really excited to also partner with them. We're going to be doing a Narcan training at Bethlehem and the Midway Church, Union Park, and the Hamline Midway Coalition to make sure that if folks are in crisis, we're all equipped on how to save a life, and working with our partners, you said Safe Streets, correct? On making sure that we can work together to keep Streetworks to keep our streets clean of those materials. So thank you very much. And with that said, we're gonna, what time is it?
Justin, did you say safe streets or save streets?
Streetworks to keep our streets safe. Lots of S's. Been watching too much Sesame Street with Malloy. That being said, we have about 15 minutes for Q&A, and I just want to reiterate what Jenny had said is that we have all of these questions posted publicly. Director Wiese went through a lot of work to help us get some of these questions answered. But for right now, I know that there's always an opportunity for us to bring questions into the room. So if you've already asked a question, I'm going to prioritize the people who haven't spoken yet. And I saw this man's hand first. So I'm going to kind of run around and just hold the microphone. Maybe Jenny, you can help me keep track of who's who. But I saw first, young man.
I think people can hear me talking. You mentioned earlier that a charter change proposal has gone before the city council a couple of times and has been denied. What reasons did the city council give for opposing it?
So it has to go to the Charter Commission first and then back to City Council. And one of the times the Charter Commission denied it, I shouldn't have denied it. Yeah, I suppose they voted in the negative. The other time it lost at council by 1 vote. So it was a 6-1 vote. A variety of reasons. And I would say the predominant one is a fear that people who are already economically impacted and targeted by things like criminal citations will just suffer at the hands of a new tool.
But I assume that since you're proposing this is a tool that you consider important for you to do your job.
Indeed, I do.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm going to go back here to my good friend Julie, and then we're going to go to Cole and then Pastor John.
As a disabled person in the neighborhood, you're on a complaint basis. But if I'm to go out in the winter to make a complaint about a sidewalk being not shoveled or corners, I'm gonna get stuck and not be able to get back and forth. So making complaints is not easy, or like the bumps in the sidewalks and that kind of stuff. So how do I go about that? I'm just gonna pause.
That sounds great.
Thank you so much. So we hosted actually Public Works organized it. Maybe I'm too far. No.
Snow Summit. Snow Summit for the very first time last October. And we brought in all the alley captains. Have any of you
Heard of the term alley captain? Oh, good.
So I have
Not heard of the term alley captain, but and when we were checking people in and said, "Are you an alley captain?" We got
We don't have an alley captain now because we have a service that does like, I think from Snelling all the way down to Fairview. And
so
that's-
typically the alley captains coordinate that service.
But I don't know who it is anymore that was, because the service just does it every year. They send out the bills and neighbors don't, the neighborhood doesn't send out the bills. The service does.
a lot of
Conversation.
are involved around how
People administer it because some people
do I just give my random neighbor $20?
to do this service, that doesn't seem like the right thing. So a plug for alley captains, they do a lot of hard work at Snow Summit, but also we had the Mayor's Council on Disability at the Snow Summit too, to talk about exactly what you're talking about and the impacts to people with disabilities. Because when you hit a unshoveled sidewalk and you can't get through, you also don't have the option of taking Metro Mobility because that requires an appointment.
Right.
And now,
So basically I'm stuck in the house all winter without the ability to go anyplace, except for to turn it on my neighbors who don't shovel their walk. And it's like,
it's a big issue.
or even access to buildings or the bumps in the sidewalks. I have to sit here take a camp picture of all my neighbors' houses. As I'm going down the street, taking pictures, and then people are gonna go, why is this strange lady taking a picture of my house? So that I would have to complain on, several different properties. In order,
No, it is a huge issue, and I don't think it's one that people really recognize when they decide that
They're gonna watch another
go
episode.
to Grey's Anatomy instead of shovel the sidewalk. So really, we want people to shovel their sidewalk, not only for that, I mean, slips, trips, falls. It's a huge issue, and not being able to get to your medical appointments, being able to get to work, those are also big issues. The kids not being able to get to the school bus. And so we were very fortunate this year with our snow level, to not have very many snow walk complaints because there wasn't any. But we've talked, Snow Summit is about that because we want compliance and being able to send people letters, and I mean thousands of letters. Being able to send people letters is what the police chief calls the bronze medal. We'll get it shoveled. Right, you can also hire the neighbor kid for far less than what it costs to shovel your sidewalk.
We'll get it.
Done, but the primary thing we want is it for to be shoveled. So if people can help each other out, if we can organize volunteers, we're talking about any unique and creative idea. We've had like the high school wrestling team said, we're gonna take this whole block. Is that you?
Is my team yet?
Yeah.
Yay. And that's the kind of stuff that we're hoping to see because, somebody might be out of town, forgot about getting somebody to shovel the sidewalk. Somebody might have sprained their ankle. They're used to being mobile and being able to go out and do that themselves and help. So part of it is that we just want folks to reach out to their neighbors and say, you doing okay? You usually shovel your sidewalk. Or if you have that teenage kid, make them keep going. They don't need to be on the iPad, do the whole. So, helping each other out can help everybody out. We've talked about the volunteer program and we've looked at other cities and what they do. What surprised me is that they require the folks who receive help to be
Low income or disabled. And
I don't care if you're able-bodied and 23, if your sidewalk isn't shoveled, that's impacting somebody else. And so my goal is that it just gets shoveled. So, you know, we're looking at unique ways to solve that issue. And sometimes Mother Nature helps us, like last year.
That is a very long answer.
It was a very important question, and I want to bring up too that this is another great example of how councils can work with the city to create systems change, like our transportation committee members cleaning up the adopt-a-stop, right? We're doing something today that makes an impact while also working to get Leslie Candris, the general manager of Metro Transit, to get into a meeting with the manager of the Parks Department to keep those medians clean, am I right? I get an email about that once a week. So this is just another example. Work to get change systems while also doing what we can today. And I would love to sit down and talk more about our new program this year for de-icer alternatives in ways that we can partner with the snow angels here in Hamline Midway to make sure that our neighbors can get around, because it's a big mobility issue. Pastor John, your hand was in the air. Here's the microphone that kind of works. Should we just have him speak loudly? Is that okay?
So what I heard tonight, in addition to a lot of good information, thank you, is a big concern for inequity with regard to who's held accountable and for how much proportionally with regard to our properties, our neighborhood properties. And I heard that loud and clear, and I just want to emphasize it, and I want to send that back to you and to Sean Kershaw and to the city council, that I feel, and I think you all feel, a great concern that if a holding company whose box office is Spokane, Washington, it's not CBS, they don't own it, or Bill McGuire gets slapped for $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 for abatement that's very different than you or I getting $300 for grass, right? Or a mattress, or a bid. So it's systemic, and this is my concern, is that in trying to apply these rules fairly, right, it's not equitable. Because the responsibility of somebody who's owning and holding a huge commercial property that's going to seed and attracting all kinds of problems is slapped with basically the same proportional penalty that a homeowner is. That's not equitable. And it's not proportional to the blight and the problem in the neighborhood. So anyway, I just want to send that back. I want to lift it up because I heard it tonight. I feel it also. And I would like to see a systemic change in proportionality to our problems.
A response there, please.
A little bit. So it's gracious. You said something there that reminded me that there is a new resource in St. Paul for mattresses. A company will come pick them up and recycle the vast majority of the materials in the mattress. And that is through Director Kershaw, who made that connection, his solid waste folks did. And so I heard this actually at their annual meeting, and I texted him right away, he's still speaking even. I said, I need to know all that information because I want to get it to our inspectors so that when they see a mattress and they can tell people that this resource is available to them, so that if you don't own a pickup to get rid of your mattress and you use all your bulky item credits for that period, that you can get rid of it and in a sustainable manner. But your point about equity and the cost of these is well taken. And it's one of the reasons why actually one of the only things that we do not charge the customer for is graffiti abatement. And that was because the council many moons ago decided that the city would subsidize the abatement for graffiti. That people aren't graffitiing their own buildings, presumably. And that the city would remove graffiti, wash it off, or paint over it at the cost of taxpayers. So that is a decision. Those are decisions that the city council can make on what it is that we are charging for services.
But my primary point is not what's happening to us as individual homeowners. It's the proportionality of what is Bill McGuire being penalized for, what is this holding company in Spokane being penalized for their proportionally much larger blight on the neighborhood. So that's my real point. Not, you know, I mean, yeah, it's heartbreaking when somebody gets charged $300 for tall grass. But this bigger point is proportionally, it's way out of whack.
Thank you. And I agree.
So, no, we got 1, 2, 3 questions
left.
Half of our renters here in the Midway or Cosper spending 30% or more of their income on rent. When you have an abatement, and that also includes homeowners too, the cost of housing has gone through the roof. And so $500 for Bill McGuire is significantly different for a homeowner who gets $300, $500 for an abatement order. So another high five, bringing that up, appreciate it.
I saw your hand go up.
All right.
I live across on the south side of Interstate on Carroll Avenue, and when the illustrious Allianz Stadium went up, parking in front of my own home was impossible. So we spent a year doing petitions and doing everything else to get permit parking. The problem is, they don't enforce it. Why did we go through all this? Why did we pay $25 a year to get a permit to park in front of our own homes when there's no enforcement? That's what
So I can tell you what I think, but those are two programs that are handled by departments that aren't mine. So Public Works administers the residential parking permit program, and St. Paul Police administer the parking enforcement. The residential parking permit districts, there are districts and there's a number of permits allotted. I'm learning about this because we are moving from the old technology to the new. There are not enough parking enforcement folks to go around in the city. There are a lot of residential parking zones. There's a lot of parking violations. And it's not uncommon for me to hear that people aren't being ticketed or towed. So we do need more parking enforcement officers for sure. And I believe they're not fully staffed currently.
And I am
Getting your contact information to follow up. We have Heather, then Cole, and then I'm sorry, we do have to wrap it again. Beginning of the conversation, not the.
I appreciate this, and I can tell that, yes, it really has, and you have good intentions. But just to echo a lot of the feeling in the room, I do feel like there's obviously a different standard, that it's not just coming from our experiences, but I'm hearing it in some of your statements too. Like way back, a lot of questions ago, you made the statement that we try to be business friendly, and you used an example, and it was in response to this concern that, for instance, if CVS has a mattress that's supposed to go out on Wednesday, and they say they have somebody coming on Thursday, that goes fine. You seem to really value your business relationships, and that's great. But I'm not hearing that same kind of statement applied to residents. And for me, it sounds like there's a cultural bias here at DSI that I would just really hope that you and your staff and people would look at really critically, because there is so much that is up to the discretion of your inspectors. So much is. And I think that there's probably a case where it's easier to slap somebody with a $300 fine and they don't have the ability to fight back, to take you to court. And the same thing is not true for a business that has a lot more money. So I'm just, there's so much, the rules apply to everyone, that's great, but they don't. And, from what I'm hearing, you have these relationships with business owners that you don't have with all of the residents. So, more I'm just asking for you to look critically at yourself.
Thank you for that. I did say that we are business friendly, and that's not to the absence of being resident friendly. So the difference, the major difference, is that when you get that scary letter from the city, you don't feel like you can reach out and ask for more time. And you can, and people do, and we do give more. I actually had a former council member call me and say, my neighbor across the street has got this, and this. And DSI isn't doing anything about it. So I look it up and I see what the history is, and I see that our inspector gave 3 months for them to change a tire for a disabled vehicle that's sitting in the driveway. Because the resident reached out and said, I can't change this tire, I need help changing the tire. Then reached out again and said, the tire I had is also flat, I'm gonna need an extension. The problem is that you raised, is that people don't feel comfortable calling us to ask us. But if you ask us, and you say, I need more time, 95% of the time, we're gonna give you more time. Does the letter say that?
No, I'll tell you right now, it does not.
Our number is on it. I don't think it says call us if you need more time.
Yeah, you might want to put that on your list.
Well, I'm gonna pass that one question off to Cole as the last question for tonight, but I do want to say that maybe it's possible to waive the $25 fee that you have to file to get an abatement reviewed. Because even $25 for a lot of folks in these times of gas and groceries, that's a lot. So maybe that's something that we could work on in the future too, is a $25 review fee. That's also with the council, everybody. We're gonna up with
So you've previously spoken about kind of leaning on people's good intentions, people want to do the right thing. And I've noticed, especially at the corner of Snelling and Sherburne, that we have a very lovely community kind of maintained garbage can that is regularly abused, knocked over, spilled all over the place. But there's a perfectly good, really nice St. Paul garbage can at the corner of Snelling University. And I would love it if we could have more of those around the CVS. So folks who do want to throw their trash away and do the right thing and maybe pick up a piece of litter can put it in a St. Paul bin and know that it's going to get picked up. Is that a thing that we can ask for these troubled properties, for folks who are just walking around, want to do their part and help clean up along the way? Because we know CVS isn't going to do it, and we're going to have to wait for the abatement team to come in and clean up CVS's mess. Like, is that something we can get in more places than just maybe one corner?
Yes. I mean, I don't know the process for it because that's not my deal, but.
Can we make one?
Sure. I'll let Kershaw know. What we decide. No, I actually just had the reverse request at a different bus stop that the receptacle is actually causing problems, and not to remove it, but to relocate it so that it's less problematic. And so, yes, that's, you know, we try to troubleshoot. We don't know where all the issues are. You see them, you're in the neighborhood. So helping us to figure out, yes, a trash can right here would be so super helpful. And actually right in front of the building where we office, there's a trash can on our corner. But across the street is the bus stop. That's where all the trash goes. It wasn't on the corner where there is no bus stop. It was on the corner where there is a bus stop. So same kind of thing. What does it take to get either, you know, another trash can there, or to relocate the one that's on our corner across the street next to the bus stop where people hang out and don't feel like they can walk the 50 steps to throw it away in the receptacle? And now we have a trash can there. So yes, you can ask, and I'm assuming there's a limited number available in the city, but I'm sure there's one available.
All right, thank you.
Awesome. I just want to thank all of you for being here. We are going to wrap up. We want to respect everybody's time. We're so grateful, Director Wiese, for you spending your time with us tonight and today to answer these questions. As Justin said. I think it says a lot to be in community with the people who live in the neighborhoods, listen to our concerns, and like start a dialogue, and I really, really appreciate that. So thank you, everybody. I have a few follow-up steps. I will be sending a follow-up email, so make sure if you did not pre-register, get your email legibly written down, because if I can't read it, I cannot send it to you. But I would love to send all of this information to you in a follow-up email. A recording of tonight's meeting will be on our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on Facebook to find it. If you have follow-up questions for us, our district council staff emails are here, and then a way to stay connected with this good work. Many of you already are, but we really encourage you. This is an ongoing conversation. Democracy is an active participant sport. And so we really all, need this kind of civic engagement. So keep it up. Don't let this be the last meeting that you attend. We've got HMC's development committee, we've got UPDC's fluid committee, Como's land use business happens on the third Tuesday. We have ice cream socials coming up in July, so check out that for some free ice cream and neighbor fun. But definitely stay connected, and thanks for being part of this conversation. Ciao. Yeah.
Also, there's magnets available.
Sweet.
You get one. I need to.